taking the time to come and join us today. So we'll go right into our next item, and this should be a great discussion, I'm hoping. And what do you mean? I'm hoping it's going to be a great discussion. So I'm going to introduce Coy McKinney, who is going to talk to us about community land trusts. I'm going to shut up now. So go ahead, Coy. It's all.
Awesome. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been kind of obsessed with community land trust and limited equity housing cooperatives for, I don't know, the last couple of years. And so if you follow me on Twitter, you won't be surprised that, I'm talking about this, because that's all I essentially tweet about. And the reason that I'm so gung-ho about it is because I do believe that this is an alternative that checks all the boxes. So it shifts us away from treating housing as a commodity. It starts to treat housing as a right. It's about collective ownership. So it's not about private developers or landlords. It's about us being in it together. And so that's the type of personal politics I'm into. And I don't know, I feel like those types of politics actually work. I'm full disclosure, I joined the Douglas Community Land Trust Board in December. When I talk about community land trust, I'm amping up them. Now, what I say is not from the Douglas Community Land Trust. This is me speaking as an individual. Let me go ahead and get into this presentation. So this quote is from, it's an excerpt from Chocolate City. And it says, in a city where tens of thousands of low-income residents needed housing, the inability of private housing developers to meet demand only underscored the magnitude of the problem. So what time period do you think this excerpt is describing?
The 1970s.
Okay, we got 1970s. Any other guesses?
How about right now?
Right now? Okay. So this is actually describing Washington, D.C. in the 1930s. So this, I saw, I'm not going to, I've seen people talk about like, oh, I wish that affordable housing was talked about more when I first got into it. I was like, well, unless you were born before 1930, we've always been talking about affordable housing, especially in this city where we actually have some progressive legislation in TOPA and DOPA that actually a lot of jurisdictions don't have. So this affordable housing crisis in DC has been around for almost a century. And when I look at the causes for this, I narrow in on capitalism. Capitalism has a bad track record with whether it's the environment, labor, healthcare, food. But it's got a bad track record. And so it should be no surprise that it also, its poisonous tentacles have messed up housing as well. And so for me, capitalism gets at the class issue and also the race issue. So last summer, we had all the protests and people were throwing up hashtags and blacking out their profiles and talking about their listening. And I saw so many Dr. Ibram X. Kendi quotes that I was like, wow, okay, maybe we're on the cusp of something. And one of the quotes that I saw that I jumped at and now I've attached it to my email signature is, in order to be truly anti-racist, you have to be truly anti-capitalist. And I think that that gets to the goods. If you can think of anti-capitalist policies and programs that's where we're going to get some radical change. And community land trusts and limited equity housing cooperatives, although they're, not everyone touts them as these anti-capitalist tools, they are. And so, I probably won't say that to different audiences, but for you guys, I figured I'm among family here, so I could be raw with that. So yeah, and this is something that anti-racist scholars, their anti-racist allies have been saying for decades as well, is that, if we want to do the anti-racism thing, we got to do anti-capitalism as well. Unfortunately, people in positions of power, and in this case, DC mayors, have not gotten the memo. A lot of mayors are guilty of this, but especially recently, Tony Williams was really, he was pushing, 100,000 more people to DC, and he really started the implementation of gentrification as a public policy. So the DC government for years now, consecutive years now, has pursued a strategy to grow the population by prioritizing development and policies that will attract and retain the quote unquote creative class, which is a predominantly young, affluent, and white demographic. And that has, of course, been at the expense of longtime working class, predominantly Black Washingtonians. And so, we know the stats about gentrification in DC, and it's clear. This second quote, housing production has consisted mostly of small rental units targeted to households earning more than 120% of the MFI. That's from the mayor's own housing equity report. So they know it. They know that the overwhelming majority of development has been targeted to people that make a whole lot of money. Now, where this gets really interesting, and it's obvious to us who have been paying attention, though, is that 120% of the MFI is someone that's making over $100,000 for a single household. And the racial component of this is that the median income of Black Washingtonians, is around $49,000 a year. So you're in the mayor's own report, it's essentially saying most of our new housing is targeted towards non-Black people. And we've seen that. That's why we've had tens of thousands of Black Washingtonians displaced from the city. That's why we're still in affordable housing crisis. That's why the public housing list is a decade wait. So that shows, it should be no surprise that our housing crisis has a racial impact as well. And philosophically for me, how I know that the system is messed up is that we shouldn't have 30,000 vacant units while also having over 6,000 people experiencing homelessness. Now I've heard and I've read urbanists and YIMBYs talking about it's natural to have some vacant units. Okay, fine, we can have some vacant units, but we shouldn't have vacant units when we have over 6,000 people experiencing homelessness. That is a clear sign that something has gone awry, and that we need to address this in a real way. And the pandemic made it clear that it's hard to quarantine if you don't have housing. So it's not only ethically right, but it's a health thing as well. So if you think that healthcare is the right, then housing is healthcare. Yeah, so, I hear some feedback. I think we got it, okay. Yes, and this last quote down here is, effectively reinforcing the previous point that we're just ramping up the number of Class A units that are being built. So this is pre-pandemic times. The number of Class A units increased 13%. They average about $2,600 a month in rent, which again is priced beyond the median household income of Black Washingtonians. And even in this pandemic, we've had in some areas, the rent decreased 17%, and it's still unaffordable. So people say build more, and it's like, well, how many Class A apartments do we have to build before 2688 comes down to something that's affordable to the average person? Too many, and we're tired of waiting on this. So we need to move in a different direction. In that direction, if I have my way, that direction should be towards shared appreciation housing. The commodification of housing has exacerbated inequality, and we can't say that housing is supposed to be an investment tool and then also expect it to be affordable. Those two are not going to work out in a sustainable way. So shared appreciation housing, I believe, is the path that we should be focusing on. And so when I talk about shared appreciation housing, I'm talking about community land trusts and limited equity housing cooperatives. And there was a recent opinion piece written in the New York Times that pointed out that community land trusts have always been rooted in racial equity. They were devised specifically to prevent the displacement of communities of color. So if Black lives matter, then Black homes should matter. And if this is a model that is rooted in racial equity, it makes sense that we should pursue this some more. Then in 2018, the DC Council actually passed legislation to start a task force that would look at limited equity housing cooperatives. And that task force released a report in October of 2019 that had some recommendations for how the DC government can ramp that up. Of course, those recommendations, we don't know what's going on with those recommendations. There's no mention of it in the comp plan, but there is some information in there. So many of the limited equity housing cooperatives are located in gentrifying or gentrified neighborhoods. They actually are some of the only remaining affordable housing in those areas. So that shows you that even if you have gentrification going on around you, limited equity housing cooperatives can withstand those market pressures. And another thing that, and this is really kind of like that really sells it for me, is that they're well tested and they're proven to work. So a 2018 Grounded Solutions study looked at over 4,000 shared appreciation units in 20 different states over 30 years and found that 99% of the units avoided foreclosure. Now, in the world of statistics, 99% has got to be one of the rarest percentages you'll ever come across. Yet, here it is. And it's avoiding foreclosure. Now, we know with capitalism, we're going to go through dips and turns every so often, but over 30 years, 99% of those units avoided foreclosure. So it's rooted in racial equity and they're resilient. To me, that makes perfect sense for why we should go all in on these models. So now I'm going to get a little bit more into what these models are. Now, I have to say that I'm still learning the specifics of them as well. I kind of approached this first from the visionary standpoint, where I was like, oh, I really like them. Now that I've joined the board, now I'm getting into the actual details and how to play the political game to get them on the agenda, get them in people's minds, and to learn how they work and the different circumstances that they can navigate in, that they exist in. So again, yes. So the first CLT in America was established in Georgia, actually, in 1969 by civil rights advocates as a means of protecting Black farmers and helping them achieve self-sufficiency. And so what they are is that they are nonprofit organizations that are made up of community members. The nonprofit they collectively own the land and then lease access to the land at affordable and below market rate prices. CLTs are membership organizations that have boards that generally consist of 1/3 industry professionals, 1/3 general community members, and 1/3 lessees and tenants that are on the land. So how they work is that they limit. So One, the fact that they're able to own the land allows them to separate the cost of property from the cost of the land. So the best way that we can really utilize these is taking public land. It's transferring public land to CLTs. That's low-hanging fruit because land can be pretty expensive. So public land is low-hanging fruit for this stuff to happen. But they establish deed restrictions, and from the beginning, when you sign that you're going to be a part of a CLT, you know that there's going to be a resale formula that ensures the property will remain affordable long term. So if you buy a house for $200,000, you will get there's a resale formula that says that you'll get a certain percentage of its appreciation once you sell. Now, it's not going to be the full market value, but we're not treating housing as a commodity. Okay, you'll get your $200,000 plus whatever appreciation has acquired has risen while you've owned it. And then the next person in line also signs up to that same agreement. So we're all kind of collectively saying, hey, we're not going to treat housing as a commodity. We're going to pay it forward. And so hopefully the money that you save in housing, you can, spend that on other things, get your credit right, or, do what, it's your money. You can do whatever you want. At least, it's not going to a private landlord. So yes, so a new resident can purchase their home outright, but then they lease the land underneath it to the CLT. The tenants then pay a monthly, sorry, there's a typo there, or annual fee to the CLT to support its operation. Those fees range from $100 a month to as little as $1 a year. They generally don't go above $100 a month. So I already mentioned that the resale formula, which keeps it affordable long term. And now the next slide it shows you how this is even a prudent financial investment. So let's say, I think Chairman Mendelson is probably on the fiscally conservative side of things, but I think he would be convinced by CLTs. If he doesn't want to have government investing a whole bunch of money in affordable housing, well, he should consider CLTs because the money goes, you only have to do a one-time investment. So here, so now if you want the fine details on how we came up with this spreadsheet, I can send that to you. I kind of am going the easy version just to give you the overall picture. But I'm saying that to say that this is not pie in the sky stuff. This is based off of, this is a conservative estimate of how property appreciates in the district and how wages increase as well. So for example, let's say we have a home that's valued at $555,000 and you want to make it affordable to someone at 50% AMI. That would require an initial subsidy of about $400,000, which would make the sale price $161,700. Now, on the left side, you have the market rate. And so this is if you want to keep the house at 50% AMI, but you're allowing the market to dictate the price. So after 7 years, the cost of the house will increase to $632,000. You'll then need to reinvest another subsidy of $450,000 to keep it affordable to someone at 50% AMI. After 14 years, the house would appreciate to $700,000. You would then need a subsidy of $500,000 to keep it affordable. After 28 years, the cost of the house would be a little over $900,000, and you would need a subsidy of about $700,000 to keep it affordable to someone at 50% AMI. Now, with the CLT, you have that one-time investment of about $400,000, and it stays there. After 7 years, you don't need to invest another subsidy. After 14 years, you don't need another subsidy. After 28 years, you don't need another subsidy. Now the increases, the value of the house is increasing, but hopefully wages are also increasing. So this will stay within that 50% AMI bracket. So this is how the resale formula can ensure that homes stay affordable long-term. Now, there are also different models for that. And so, some CLTs can prioritize, they can say, hey, we want to give people more equity when they sell their house. Okay, so then they might need another subsidy. They might need another subsidy long-term, depending on the market. There are other people that say, well, we're not going to give anybody any appreciation for it. And so they can keep it really affordable for a long time. Okay, so it depends on the CLT and what resale formula they choose. Great, so now I wanna move on to limited equity housing cooperatives. And so limited equity housing cooperatives are similar to CLTs in the fact that they limit the resale of units. What's different is that a community land trust owns land, and limited equity housing cooperatives generally own buildings. And so the building, so the tenants in the building, and these are great for TOPA, the Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act. So if a building is on the market, the tenants can form a tenant association, use TOPA, get a mortgage to acquire the building, and then the residents will purchase a share and a monthly membership fee. This will all, depending on the funding and the financing that they're able to get. The idea is to keep it affordable. That's the goal. And so then once the shares are distributed, then the building is run democratically by the tenants themselves. So there's no landlord, they are their own landlords. Okay, now some people say that CLTs are more stable because it's a larger group of people that are organizing it and running it. Some people say that the limited equity housing cooperatives are a little bit more, can be a little trickier because, once you get a group of people together, we're prone for drama. But it is another opportunity, and they're still happening in the city now. There's actually a property in Southwest where I live that's going to be on the market, that's currently on the market, and we're trying to organize to get it to turn it into a limited equity housing cooperative. Now it's almost 700 units, which is unheard of, but hey, we're go big or go home. And so DC approximately has about 4,400 units that are in a limited equity housing cooperative, and these are spread out through about 99 co-op buildings. I have this photo of Linda Leaks because I had the honor of listening to her speak. She is essentially the queen of limited equity housing cooperatives in the city. She is, I don't know how many, co-ops she's organized, but she was a big deal in getting them organized. So we have some local knowledge here that we can tap into, and has a wealth of knowledge and resources to continue to make this happen in the city. And so yes, so the last slide is about opportunities to implement this. At Douglas CLT, we are the pandemic kind of there's only two official staff. There were plans to hire another one. The pandemic kind of put that on pause, but we're trying to get up and running. And we recently we were selected as a partner with DIMPED for a site, the Langston Slater site. I believe that's near like North Capitol in Florida. this is the first time DMPED has actually partnered with with a community land trust. So we're hoping that this will be the sign of a new focus or a new direction for them. I was kind of disappointed that at the press release, Falciccio said that this model is new to them, and I was like, well, dang, bro, like you guys are supposed to know about this stuff. And we have a guest from Baltimore, and Baltimore just invested I can't remember how, it was at least a couple million into their CLT. So, and Houston is trying to be the largest CLT in the country. So, DC's got its work cut out for him, and we should be up to the task. So anyway, we should encourage the government to use DOPA. I don't know if the government has ever used DOPA, but they should use it to maintain affordable housing. TOPA as well. Use the Housing Production Trust Fund to create and fund more shared appreciation units instead of selling homes that are that have liens on them. Instead of selling them to speculators, transfer them to the Douglas CLT. We can adopt right to sell bills. So if someone thinks that they won't be able to keep their house, they should be able to sell it to the Douglas Community Land Trust. And hey, maybe they might even be able to stay in the house. Another thing we got to stop doing is stop selling public land to these private developers who just turn it into just a field day for wealthy people. Like I'm in Southwest, so the Wharf is a prime example of that. I just read an article saying that there's going to be this 12-story condo in phase 2 of the Wharf that's going to have like an indoor saltwater lap pool. They're going to have a car elevator for people. There's going to be 1 bedrooms priced at almost $700,000. And there's going to be 6,000 square foot penthouses at $12 million. And this is on public land. This is on formerly public land. So we got to cut that mess out and transfer that public land to land trusts. Demand policymakers invest in the DCLT. I know it's budget season. We will hopefully be come up with some numbers and a strategy that we can push out to people to get in their council members' ears or inboxes and say, hey, we need to invest in this. This is where we need to be prioritizing. Another thing is we can follow the recommendations that the Limited Equity Housing Cooperative Task Force stated in their report. They said increase the number of LECs by 45% by 2025. So let's do that. And then also just getting more awareness about the model out to people. If people don't want to sell their house on the market, they can transfer it to the DCLT. So really, like, I would like to get as much property and land under community control as possible. Because I'm just so sick of these private developers just really exploiting what's going on here. And then we have no say in what's going on. So I've seen too many zoning commission hearings where the developer will get up there and talk about how they're trying so hard to provide affordable housing, blah, blah, blah. And then they max out at 8%. We just had a Douglas Development came in here, and this guy went on this whole soliloquy about how he's trying to do something, blah, blah, blah. And we got 8%. Like there's a nonprofit church that's building more affordable housing in their one project than Douglas Development and JBG are building in 3 projects in Southwest combined. So yeah, so that's essentially, I'm done. I can get off my soapbox and I can take any questions if there are any.
Have y'all had a discussion about a trust that's, well, I mean, I haven't been able to find anything, but like a trust around people, because like part of the issue that I have with like the Baltimore City ones, the Baltimore City Land Trust, is that a lot of it does secure the land and the value of the land, but it also implies that credit scoring is not inherently racist and the displacements already happen. So where I see things going weird, especially in Baltimore, is that, the associations that are managing a lot of the land trusts, there has already been corruption in that as far as development and the incentive to give developers letters of support that may not represent community support, because there's not the same amount of engagement, especially not with people that aren't registered voters. So I think like the one thing that I have like a squad that's about to go ham on like redlining reparations, as like filling in the blanks of the displacement that's already happened, and almost like building a people trust so people can pay what they owe. So I don't know if there's anything and like any discussion in DC about that yet.
I haven't heard a discussion like that, but that's that's a good idea because that keeps keeps us honest, I believe. Because I have read, throughout the country, people approach the land trust with different intentions, and so my intentions are for some radical, to be honest, I'm on the anarchist side of things, so that's where my heart lies. So I'm not, I don't want us to capitulate and get into shady stuff. So I think that sounds like a good idea that we should bring up. I'm going to write that down for us to discuss, and if you don't mind, if I could follow up with you to learn more.
Yeah,
about that.
because we're working on a project that is like literally pay what you owe. Here's the calculator.
Coy, this is really a fantastic presentation. And I would, could you put this presentation on YouTube? Is this a suggestion? And then put a link on our website so people can have access to it.
Yeah, I'm down. You guys are recording, so
well, that recording would be the whole meeting, and I don't know if people want to. I mean, it's great to have your explanation at the same time. Maybe we can edit it. At least, edit the recording so you have your voice explaining the slides. I think it's really great contribution. Really. Yeah. Now I want to ask a question though, in terms of DC, where 60% of the folk are renters, and the other solution that's proposed as a decommodifying housing, of course, is social housing. And Will Merrifield basically ran on that. And there's a lot of interest in that. I'm not saying that it should replace what you're doing, but I think it may be a complement to it. And Power DC had a lot of interest in social housing, and since it's been, preoccupied with the comp plan, which has turned out to be very problematic, as passed by the council. We could talk about that too, but at least the Commission on Racial Equity did a very good critique of it that you can find on their website. And I guess I can share that. Anyway, I'm wandering off, but I'm really appreciate what you presented. A great resource.
Thank you.
Actually, it's funny. David's question was kind of going to be like my question in a way, because Coy, the exchange that you had on Twitter that you had mentioned the person had mentioned social housing, and he kind of seemed like he either conflated it or confused it with the community land trust model. And I was just wondering if maybe you could take a minute to kind of explain maybe like what the differences are, and if you feel that, and why you feel that maybe the land trust model is more effective than the social housing model.
Yeah. Definitely double check me on this, but my understanding of social housing is that it'd be government built, and then it's open to anybody, and as long as they pay 30% of their income. And so then you would have mixed income. It's just, but the part that gives me a little pause is that the government's role in it. And so we've seen how the government has treated public housing. And so I know that, the rent, if you tier it, and so you have people that you have that are affluent that they can pay more, and then you have that kind of subsidizes the people that can't pay as much, and that those costs are supposed to maintain the property and keep it, up to code and all that other stuff. It's just the role of the government that gives me a little cause to pause with community land trusts. And now there are some community land trusts where they're more government run than they are collective ownership. So, those ones I'm not really talking about. I'm talking about the people actually own the property and they are the stewards of the property. That's the CLT that I'm most interested in. And that's the one thing that, the one difference that my understanding of social housing from CLTs. Now, definitely double check, me on social housing. I haven't gotten into that one as deeply as I have with CLTs and LEHCs. If I have to choose between social housing and market rate housing, I'm choosing social housing every time. So I don't want to, poo-poo it or anything. It's just at the top of my list are CLTs.
Thank you, Coy. Nakaja, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did, but I put it in the chat, but I'll say it out loud. I was wondering, like, when you were talking, I guess, like, what is the best way to, I guess, inhibit the government from selling public property, land, and housing to the highest bidder? So if there's like a way to like thwart the process so the community is made available, like knows about the availability of the option of community land trust, and then also is able to like execute on it. And I said that because I know that there's been I live on Georgia Avenue, and I know that there's been like a lot of buildings and abandoned buildings that recently, some of them are still abandoned, but a lot of them are going to big high developers now. And I was just wondering, like, have you researched or known of a way for the community to kind of intersect that process? So, having the option of community land trust is made available. Because I know that they talked about trying to do like some type of Georgia Avenue development plan for the indigenous people that lived in Georgia Avenue, but they never, actually did anything about it. So I wonder if this is like a program that could be put in place for that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% where we need to be thinking. And that's kind of why maybe to an annoying degree, that's all I tweet about are CLTs, because I feel like people talk about community-led development, but they don't have specifics. This is an example of community-led development. So to answer your question, what we're doing in Southwest is that one of the members in Southwest Action, this neighborhood group that I'm in, she actually looked up all of the government-owned land in Ward 6. And from that list, we said, all right, which one of these sites can we actually do the CLT? And so we settled on this fire truck repair station that's in Southwest. We know it's going to get redeveloped. We don't know the timeline on any of this, but we know it's going to get, it's going to relocate to another location. And then that land will be available for redevelopment. It's even been upzoned, or maybe not upzoned, but its zoning has changed in the most recent comp plan. And so in early April, we've started this petition. Even though we don't know the timeline, but we're saying right now, we're circulating this petition to get, and we're doing tabling to let people know about the model and saying, hey, look, this piece of property right here, there's not going to be any of this selling to Hoffman for $1. We're taking this property right now. So I guess my suggestion would be to find government-owned land that's in the neighborhood that you're looking for, and then just what's always worked are social movements and grassroots organizing and getting the word out and saying from the jump, like, hey, this is what we want to do with this. This is why we should do it. And now, of course, I do think that legislation can also work, and with Douglas CLT, we're working on some legislation that can help with that. And one piece I think we're going to look at is if we can get So when there's an RFP that goes out, can they, like, in their scoring of the proposals, can they give extra